3 weeks after burying my husband Cliff, my son handed me a folder and announced that while I had enjoyed a great run, it was time to downsize. Inside was a brochure for Sunset Manor, senior living with beige walls and scheduled activities. Below it was a prepaid debit card with my name printed in sterile black letters. And just like that, I learned I was being gently but very firmly evicted from my own life. My name is Lena Bradford. I am 62, a retired aerospace engineer who spent 35 years designing navigation systems for commercial aircraft. I thought I had done everything right, raised my only son Aaron with love and high expectations, supported his MBA dreams through Northwestern, paid off our 4-bedroom colonial in full, and stood by my husband for 39 years through career changes, health scares, and the everyday turbulence of marriage. But now, 3 weeks into widowhood, my own son Aaron with his perfectly polished wife Megan and their practiced smiles was systematically replacing me in my own life. Aaron explained that the house was too big for one person, settling into Cliff's favorite leather chair like he already owned it. His voice carried that patronizing tone he had perfected in business school. He claimed Dad knew I would need something more manageable, and that was why he had transferred the deed before he passed. Megan nodded sympathetically, her manicured fingers drumming against her designer purse. She informed me they had already spoken with the movers, who could pack everything by Friday. She assured me I would love Sunset Manor, because they had bridge games and water aerobics. Aaron continued, explaining it was a gift to the next generation, pulling out official-looking papers. He said Dad wanted them to build their family here and honor his memory by filling these rooms with grandchildren. I stared at them, my mind racing. Cliff had been many things: devoted husband, brilliant engineer, occasional workaholic, but impulsive was not one of them. This was a man who kept detailed spreadsheets for grocery shopping, who color-coded our tax documents dating back to 1985, who spent 6 months researching before buying a toaster. The idea that he would quietly transfer our house or home without discussing it with me first felt as impossible as gravity suddenly reversing direction. Something did not add up, and after 4 decades of troubleshooting complex systems, I knew when something was fundamentally wrong. But grief is a strange fog. It makes you question everything you thought you knew. Makes you wonder if you missed conversations, if important details slipped past while you were focused on doctor appointments and funeral arrangements. Maybe Cliff had mentioned it. Maybe I had not been listening. I finally told them I needed to see the original documents. Aaron's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He insisted I was grieving and should let them handle the legal details. He claimed I should trust them because they were family. The word trust hung in the air like a challenge. And for the first time since Cliff's funeral, I felt something other than sadness. I felt the sharp, familiar edge of suspicion, the same instinct that had served me well in a male-dominated engineering field for over 3 decades. If my son wanted me to trust him, he was going to have to earn it. Starting with proof that Cliff had willingly signed away the life we had built together. I left that house with 3 suitcases, a box of my old NASA flight patches, and one mission: find the truth. Aaron and Megan had given me 48 hours to transition smoothly. They had even hired movers to help pack my belongings. How thoughtful. But as I watched strangers box up 39 years of marriage, I realized something crucial: I wasn't running away. I was conducting a strategic retreat. The roadside inn I chose wasn't much faded carpet, coffee that tasted like motor oil, and a view of the interstate, but it was mine. No one could evict me from a place I was paying for by the night. I unpacked my laptop and made the first call I never thought I would need to make. I identified myself as Lena Bradford to Jessica at Carla Reyes' law office and explained that I needed to speak with Carla about my husband's estate. I told her that Cliff Bradford had passed 3 weeks ago. Carla had been Cliff's legal advisor for over 15 years, handling everything from patent filings to our wills. If anyone knew about a house transfer, it would be her. When Carla came to the phone minutes later, her warm voice expressed sorrow for my loss. She said that Cliff was a good man and asked how I was holding up. I told her I had been better, then asked her something important: whether Cliff had transferred our house deed to Aaron before he died. Silence stretched across the connection. When Carla finally spoke, her voice carried a sharp edge of confusion. She told me that couldn't be right, explaining that Cliff never changed the deed. She would have handled that paperwork herself, she said. Everything was left to me: the house, the accounts, even his patent royalties. My breath caught in my throat. I asked if she was absolutely certain. She confirmed she was completely certain. In fact, she said she had mailed me the complete estate packet last week. I should have received copies of everything by now. The will, property deeds, financial statements, all of it. That's when the second piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I had been checking my mail religiously since Cliff's death, sorting through sympathy cards and medical bills. But I had never received any estate documents from Carla's office. Aaron and Megan had moved into my house 2 days after the funeral, claiming they needed to help with the transition. They had been intercepting my mail. I asked Carla if I could come see her that day, explaining that I thought there had been some kind of mistake. She agreed, but added that it sounded like more than a mistake. An hour later, I sat in Carla's downtown office while she spread documents across her mahogany conference table. Each page felt like evidence in a case I was just beginning to understand. She showed me my husband's actual will, pointing to a thick document. She explained it was filed and notarized 6 months before his death. The house was mine, free and clear. All financial assets and accounts transferred to me immediately. Even Cliff's ongoing royalties from his aerospace patents, and those were worth about $40,000 a year. She flipped to another section, explaining that Aaron's inheritance was in a conditional trust. He received access only if, and she quoted, he demonstrated ongoing support for Lena's independence and well-being. The irony was almost beautiful. Cliff had protected me even from the grave. I asked what happened if Aaron violated that condition. Carla's smile was grim but satisfied. She explained that the trust becomes void and he gets nothing. I leaned back in the leather chair, feeling something I hadn't experienced in weeks' power. I told her that Aaron had presented me with documents showing the house was transferred to him. If those documents were fake, she confirmed that was fraud, forgery, and potentially elder abuse, depending on how they had obtained my signature. Carla gathered the papers into neat stacks. She said she was going to give me copies of everything, the real documents. But she thought I needed more than a lawyer. She was right. If Aaron and Megan had gone this far to steal my inheritance, they weren't going to back down just because I had discovered the truth. They had declared war on a retired aerospace engineer. They had no idea what they had just started. Cliff used to say that if something crashes, you shouldn't panic but run the checklist. That's exactly what I did next. Back in my motel room, I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet the kind Cliff would have been proud of. Column A, evidence needed. Column B, people to contact. Column C, timeline. Column D, legal actions required. By midnight, I had my flight plan. Criminal defense lawyer. Private investigator. Forensic document analyst. Reporter from the local paper. I started with Marcus Chen, a private investigator Carla had recommended. His office was above a Vietnamese restaurant, and he looked more like an accountant than a detective, which turned out to be perfect. Marcus told me that document fraud cases were his specialty, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. He said my son had made several critical mistakes. First, he had moved too fast. Second, he had underestimated me. Marcus had already begun preliminary research. Aaron and Megan's social media showed them posting house renovation photos from my address within days of Cliff's funeral. Hashtags included new beginnings and generational wealth. Marcus observed dryly that they had documented their own crime. He said he had seen drug dealers with better operational security. Next was Dr. Sarah Kim, the forensic document expert. Her laboratory looked like something from CSI high-powered microscopes, UV lights, computer analysis systems. She told me to bring her the fraudulent documents, explaining she would need the originals, not copies. She said forged signatures have telltale characteristics, pressure variations, hesitation marks, pen lifts where there shouldn't be any. The hardest call was to Detective Ray Morrison at the county sheriff's office. Filing criminal charges against your own son isn't something you rehearse. Morrison told me when I explained the situation that he had been doing this for 22 years. He said family fraud was more common than people think. Usually it was adult children who assume elderly parents won't fight back. I said sharply that I wasn't elderly. Morrison replied that no, I wasn't, and that was going to be their biggest mistake. 3 days later, Dr. Kim called with results that made my engineering heart sing with precision. She told me the case was ironclad. The signature on the fake deed wasn't mine-wrong pressure patterns, incorrect letter formations, and 3 spelling variations I never make. The notary stamp was completely fabricated, wrong format, wrong registration number. Most damning, the document was dated 2 weeks before my husband's death, when he was in hospice care and legally incapacitated. But Marcus had found the smoking gun. He told me that my daughter-in-law had hired a freelance graphic designer, sliding a printed Venmo transaction across his desk. Payment made 4 days after the funeral. The memo line read, graphic edits for legal docs. She literally left a paper trail. The designer, terrified of legal consequences, had already provided Marcus with the original files, email correspondence, and detailed testimony about exactly what Megan had asked him to create. Marcus explained that she had told the designer it was for a family presentation. He had no idea he was creating fraudulent legal documents. On Thursday morning, Detective Morrison and a process server arrived at my former house simultaneously. I watched from Marcus's sedan parked across the street as Aaron answered the door in his bathrobe, coffee mug in hand. The look on his face when he saw the criminal fraud charges was worth every sleepless night I had spent in that motel. Megan's reaction was even better. She actually tried to run in designer heels and a silk robe before realizing there was nowhere to go. By noon, the story had broken online. Local engineer exposes family inheritance fraud. The reporter Janet Walsh from the county paper had been fascinated by the case. She told me it was David and Goliath, except David was a 62-year-old aerospace engineer who had just taken down her own son with spreadsheets and forensic evidence. I didn't call the media to humiliate Aaron and Megan. I called them because sunlight is the best disinfectant, and I wanted everyone to know that targeting widows has consequences. By evening, my phone was ringing constantly, other women sharing similar stories, lawyers offering assistance, reporters requesting interviews. But the most important call came from Carla. She told me they had both been arrested. Aaron was trying to claim I was confused by grief, and Megan was insisting it was a miscommunication. But the evidence was overwhelming. I sat in that motel room, looking at the interstate lights through my window, and smiled for the first time in months. They had tried to clip my wings. Instead, they had taught me how to soar. Aaron called once from a blocked number. I didn't answer, but when I saw the voicemail notification, curiosity won over caution. His voice was different, smaller, desperate, stripped of the patronizing confidence he'd worn like armor. In the message, he pleaded with me, saying we needed to talk and that this had gotten completely out of hand. He said he knew I was angry, but we were family and could work this out privately. He explained that I didn't understand what the legal fees were doing to them. Megan's parents had cut them off, and his job was reviewing his employment because of the criminal charges. He asked me to please call him back. I saved the message. Evidence is evidence. The next communication came through Carla, a formal letter from Aaron's attorney attempting to negotiate. The language was predictably desperate: misunderstanding, grief-induced confusion, family reconciliation, mutually beneficial resolution. My response was delivered through Detective Morrison. They had clipped my wings, but I had built new ones. And this time, they were mine. The attempted character assassination started 3 days later. Aaron had hired a different attorney, one who specialized in elder law, and apparently had no qualms about painting grieving widows as mentally incompetent. They filed a motion claiming I was suffering from severe emotional distress and compromised decision-making capacity due to profound grief. They submitted evidence, neighbors' testimonies about seeing me crying in my garden, my failure to maintain normal social interactions after Cliff's death, and my erratic behavior in checking into a roadside motel instead of accepting their generous housing assistance. The motion requested a competency hearing and temporary guardianship with Aaron as my proposed guardian. Naturally, it was a masterful legal maneuver. If successful, it would flip the entire narrative. I'd become the confused widow who'd fabricated fraud charges against her loving son, who was only trying to help. But they'd made a fatal error. They tried to use my grief as a weapon against me. Carla was furious when she called. She said this was unconscionable and that they were attempting to gaslight me through the legal system. I asked if they could win. She said not if she had anything to say about it. But we needed character witnesses, people who could testify to my mental acuity and emotional stability. That's when I learned who my real allies were. Dr. Patricia Vance, my former supervisor at Lockheed Martin, flew in from California. She testified that Lena Bradford was one of the sharpest minds she had ever worked with. She said if I claimed there was fraud, there was fraud. She would trust my analysis over anyone else's. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who had brought me casseroles after the funeral, spoke about my methodical approach to sorting through Cliff's belongings and my clear-headed handling of insurance paperwork. Even Janet Walsh, the reporter, provided a sworn statement about my coherent, detailed responses during interviews and my precise recollection of dates and documents. But the most powerful testimony came from Marcus, the private investigator. He told the court that he had worked with dozens of fraud victims and that my investigative instincts and evidence-gathering skills rivaled those of trained law enforcement. My case file organization was better than most attorneys. If I were incompetent, he wouldn't have been able to build such an airtight case. The competency hearing lasted exactly 47 minutes. Judge Patricia Holbrook, a woman about my age with steel gray hair and no patience for nonsense, reviewed the evidence and testimonies with surgical precision. She announced that the court found no evidence whatsoever of diminished capacity. I had demonstrated exceptional clarity in protecting my legal interests. Furthermore, this motion appeared to be a transparent attempt to discredit the victim of alleged fraud rather than address the substantive criminal charges. She turned to Aaron's attorney with barely concealed contempt and suggested the counselor advise his clients to focus their efforts on defending against the criminal charges, rather than attacking the character of the woman they allegedly defrauded. Outside the courthouse, Aaron tried one last desperate play. He approached me directly without his attorney present. He told me he was sorry and had made mistakes, but this was destroying his entire life. His career, his marriage, everything. He asked if I couldn't find it in my heart to forgive my only son. For a moment, looking at his red-rimmed eyes and rumpled suit, I almost remembered the little boy who used to help Cliff in the garage, who'd proudly shown me his report cards, who'd called me his hero during his college graduation speech. But then I remembered the folder with the senior living brochure, the fake documents, the way he'd sat in Cliff's chair and spoken to me like I was already dead. I told Aaron quietly that he had stopped being my son the moment he decided I was disposable. I walked away and didn't look back. The legal machinery ground forward with merciless efficiency. With Carla's help, we froze all accounts they'd accessed using the fraudulent documents. The conditional trust Cliff had set up for Aaron voided the moment he'd violated the Support Lena's Independence clause. They walked away with nothing but debt, legal fees, and a criminal record. I walked back into my life stronger, wiser, and finally free. I didn't move back into my old home. Walking through those rooms felt like visiting a museum of someone else's life. Every corner held memories that belonged to a different version of myself, the woman who'd trusted blindly, who'd believed family meant safety, who'd never imagined her own son could betray her so completely. That woman was gone, and honestly, I didn't miss her. Instead, I found something extraordinary, a converted airplane hangar on the edge of town. High ceilings that soared 40 feet above concrete floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows that filled the space with light. Wide open expanses where I could breathe, think, and build whatever came next. The realtor thought I was crazy. She questioned whether it was so industrial and wondered if I wouldn't prefer something more traditional, like a nice condo, perhaps. But standing in that vast space, listening to my voice echo off the metal walls, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Possibility. I bought it the next day. Renovating became my meditation. I hired contractors for the major work: plumbing, electrical, insulation, but I tackled the design myself. One end became my living space: bedroom, kitchen, library. The other end transformed into something entirely new: an office, conference room, and workshop combined. 6 months after Aaron's arrest, I was ready to launch Wings for Women Over 60. The nonprofit emerged from the dozens of phone calls I'd received after the news coverage. Women sharing eerily similar stories, adult children who'd assumed control of finances, family members who'd pressured them into downsizing, relatives who'd convinced them they were too old to manage their own affairs. Margaret, a retired teacher from 3 counties over, told me they had said she was becoming a burden. Her daughter moved her into assisted living and sold her house while she was recovering from hip surgery. She didn't even know until the new owners showed up at her door. Eleanor, a former bank manager, discovered her son had been using her credit cards for years. He said she'd given him permission but couldn't remember because of her age. She was 72, not 92, and her memory was fine. But everyone believed him instead of her. These weren't isolated cases. They were patterns. Wings for Women offered 3 services: legal referrals to attorneys who specialize in elder fraud, emergency housing assistance for women displaced by family betrayal, and something equally important: witnesses who would testify that these women were competent, capable, and deserving of respect. My first public speaking engagement was at the Regional Engineering Society. Standing at that podium, looking out at faces of colleagues who'd known me for decades, I felt the last traces of victimhood fall away. I told them that family fraud wasn't about money. It was about power. It was about adult children who decide their aging parents are inconvenient obstacles rather than human beings with rights. And it was about a society that's too willing to believe that turning 60 means surrendering your autonomy. The applause lasted 3 minutes. Requests for speaking engagements poured in: senior centers, legal aid societies, engineering schools, women's organizations. Each audience taught me something new about resilience, about the difference between aging and surrendering, about the power of refusing to disappear quietly. In my workshop, I began building model aircraft again, a hobby I'd abandoned during marriage and motherhood. My hands remembered the precise movements cutting balsa wood, stretching fabric over frames, calibrating tiny engines. Each model represented something I'd reclaimed: patience, precision, the satisfaction of creating something beautiful that could actually fly. 8 months after moving into the hangar, I received a letter. Handwritten, my name carefully spelled across cream-colored paper. Aaron's return address in the corner. I almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity won over caution, just as it had with his voicemail. The letter was 3 pages long. Apologies, regrets, promises. He claimed therapy had helped him understand his behavior. Megan had filed for divorce, apparently. Criminal fraud charges weren't compatible with her social aspirations. He'd lost his job but found work with a smaller firm. He was attending Gamblers Anonymous, though I hadn't known gambling was part of his problems. He wrote that he knew he had broken something that couldn't be repaired, but he needed me to know that he remembered who I had taught him to be, and he was trying to become that person again. He didn't expect forgiveness. He just wanted me to know that he finally understood what he had destroyed. I read it twice. Then I fed it into the document shredder in my office. Some things, like trust, don't get rebuilt with paper and ink. Some bridges, once burned, leave better views from the other side. A year later, Wings for Women had helped 43 women, reclaim stolen assets, provided temporary housing for 16 displaced seniors, and connected dozens more with legal resources. I'd spoken at conferences in 12 states and been featured in AARP magazine's Women Who Won't Be Silenced issue. But the real victory wasn't the recognition or the nonprofit success. It was simpler than that. Every morning I wake up in a space that belongs completely to me. I drink coffee while watching sunrise stream through hangar windows. I build model planes that actually fly. I help women reclaim their power, their independence, their right to age with dignity. Justice didn't give me back the past, but it gave me something better: the freedom to shape my future exactly as I choose. And for the first time in decades, I'm flying solo and absolutely loving the view.